later to do some exercise. We have three groups. The first group looking on the role of financial literacy and trust in the central bank on the examination of inflation expectation. The second group is on the topic that will test some macroeconomic variable expectation with a consistent distribution of the household perspective by Philip Gibbs or Taylor. And the last group working on the estimation of research temporal substitution of ECBs and always use ECB survey of consumer expectation. So you will get some experience later by doing some exercise. And this morning I was very impressed with how you present very difficult papers in a very easy way to understand. So during the lunchtime I had an idea that this is a new paper from me and my co-authors. We just have very first draft right after the business term, so on the 23rd of December. So it's one day before business in Germany also work. The paper will study about the impact of fiscal expansion in Germany on how households they form inequality expectation. The impact of fiscal policy on the formation of inequality expectation. So it's a kind of new further application of survey data to address macroeconomic question. So all topic we studied so far about monetary policy, central bank communication, but this time we look at a little bit about fiscal policy and income inequality. So one of the examples that is beyond much policy and central bank communication. And I would like to ask maybe some of you read it and present it tomorrow afternoon. So it's possible.
This afternoon, you know?
No.
Tomorrow afternoon. Em thích kèm xã hơi mà thầy. Mình đi.
That's a voluntary and that's a slide that's on the and we talk about that topic of fiscal policy and also macroeconomic expectation. That is a further topic that we study at the end of the course. Okay, but it's a voluntary, so feel free and it's not written as well, but I love your criticism. Okay, so the paper I already uploaded on the site, and just feel free to download. It's a very first part, so it's even worse than the working paper we presented this morning about ECB working paper. But here is the first draft of our paper, and at the beginning of next year, so it's next week, we will make the final policy version before we upload it as a working paper version. So you are the first one to read the very first draft. Okay, so now it's time for examinations on both sides. About the first group, present on financial literacy and trust in the central bank on the formation of inflation expectation. So in the process of the paper, the application, we will work on the very first draft, and then we may ask for some friends or colleagues to read through the first draft before we upload it to publish it as for everyone who can see the paper. That is the working paper version. And then from the working paper version, we will present somewhere in conference, different conference, and then we finish that paper now to get ready enough to submit to an academic journal. So that's submit to journals after some discussion to see whether people will agree with our idea and our arguments, or what is the contribution from the audience people on our paper, and then we can see whether we can revise paper or change some aspect of the paper.
So that is one of the tasks when take the PhD program, join the seminar.
What is the task?
I mean join the seminars and so the presentation of
Yeah.
That is one of the tasks of PhD program. I just
Yes,
I
I think-
routine. I just not program, just routine for PhD student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's good practice for PhD student as well. So during your PhD time, you will present your first in many for PhD student even more steps. For example, in the first time you can present your idea first, the outline of your idea or what you plan to do and how you can solve the question. And the people will discuss about your approach first. And that's the first step. And the second step maybe once you have a draft of the paper or some result or maybe you present the second time, that people can discuss the result to see where the result consistent with what you expect or the theory and how to interpret the result. And then the last step could be when you have full paper with all the comment feedback from the audience, and you can revise one more time before you submit somewhere. Okay, so
Yeah.
what is the process of doing research?
Yeah.
Hey, one more.
New clothes.
Anh không dọc bàn tay hay đâu. Mình cắt rồi người ta không thấy.
Okay, so now you have 18 minutes to present the four
One classmate is out, so I'm just waiting for him.
Yeah, maybe okay, so maybe 1 or 2 more minutes.
Perhaps may I start now? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. So this afternoon, our group will present about the replication project. We will be using the empirical analysis, use the European Central Bank Consumer Expectation Survey. We analyze the impact of financial literacy and trust in the central bank on the formation of inflation expectations. As we know, that the financial knowledge of everyone from the high school graduates to the seniors might be different, and also among the different demographics, the financial literacy may be different. So, how is the impact of financial literacy and trust in the central bank on the formation of inflation expectation? Let's explore. So the second assignment. So our key research questions, the core questions of our replication project. First, the trust channel anchoring. Does higher trust in the European Central Bank (ECB) anchor inflation expectations? And our hypothesis is high trust significantly lower individual uncertainty. And the second question of our research project is, does financial literacy reduce inflation expectation uncertainty and lead to more precise expectations? And the corresponding hypothesis is individuals with higher financial literacy form more precise, less uncertain inflation expectations. So let me explain why they are important. Firstly, for monetary policy, inflation expectations affect consumption, saving, and also wage bargaining. Pulling and core expectations will weaken monetary policy transmissions, and central banks increasingly rely on expectation management. Secondly, for central bank communications, we can see that if expectations depend on financial literacy, which needs for education and clearer explanations. If expectations depend on trust, so credibility and institutional reputation are the key points, and it helps design targeted communication strategies for different population groups. Finally, for economic stability, high dispersion in expectation can increase macroeconomic volatility because you know in the macroeconomic courses we can say that the AS curve, that inflation expectation can impact the AS curve and can also affect the different aspects of macroeconomic, and it leads to suboptimal household decisions. Because understanding micro level drivers helps prevent the anchoring episodes. For the literature from the academic perspective, we extend and test findings from Rubler and Van der Rama published in 2020 about role of inflation literacy, and Crystallis et al. And others about the causal role of trust. The data set allows us to analyze cross country, and it provides us with rich measures of expectations and uncertainty. Also about the external validity beyond single country studies. About the data source. So we utilize the ECB Consumer Expectation Survey, which includes more than 110,000 observations among 2 Euro area economies following the original papers. We collect the data from the Netherlands, food waste from 2020 to 2025, and Austria from April 2022. Both are in Europe, and we apply monthly panel structure. And the next slide will be presented by my friend.
Okay, so this is the main model that we use in our work. First, we use baseline regression, estimate the dependent variable with the two main interest rate pressure and other control variable. And next, we use two states where to fix for endogeneity of the just ECB variable. And then in the second state of two states where we test again, we use the estimate result from the first state to regress on the dependent variable. So this is all the computation and definition of all variable in our model. So first, for dependent variable, please take note that we dependent variable we include we want to estimate of mean and mean the first movement and the uncertainty as well as second movement. But because the limitation of data, so we just do because uncertainty that we if want to estimate uncertainty, we have the data have to be in probability forecast. In density forecast, but the data just have this type of data for short term as well as 12 months ahead to original paper, each paper just estimate the role of each interest requester. So we combine both in one model to have an overview. Yeah, and also because rumor in 2020 CDU the data of household in Australia and Chrysalis and other also in 2020 use data of the Netherlands. So we also apply this to our work to just track the data from this whole country. Okay, so this is the descriptive statistic of all the variables. So first, because this our model use the two-stage square methods, and because following the original paper of Priscilla, he said that just in ECB, the paper found that just in ECB is the indulgency variable, so need an instrument variable to fix that problem. So he used they used the variable just in people and instrument variable, but because of limitation of the data, so we just use one instrument variable. And first we test for the instrument validity and also the indulgency test for the first movement, also the inflation expectation. And for that is the instrument just is extremely strong physical conventional freehand. And the second we test for indulgency. So exogenity is strongly retract with this p-value. So this is the result of this table is the result of OLS baseline regression, and this table is the result of two-stage list where when we after we fix the indulgency. So you can see that for the financial literacy, the positive associate between financial literacy and short-term inflation is robust and not driven by indulgency, with the coefficient 0.2 and also its coefficient 0.24 is trend slightly, and then for the just in ECB, in the OLS regression is negative, but in IB is much more negative, and is in the IB after take-off for indulgency, the coefficient of just ECB much more triple time, larger than triple time of the OLS regression. So just strongly short-term expectation once indulgency is aggressive. So for after that we run for the model with the dependent variable is long-term expectation in 3 years period. So the expectation, 3 ahead expectation, anchoring rely primarily on institution credibility with financial literacy providing an additional stabilizing role. You see here that just ECB is also have the same effect that it double and triple time after fixing the indulgency problem. But for the financial analyst, something happened here that the effect lower after we use two-stage square. So that means that institution credibility is the primary driver, but with financial literacy just providing an additional in stabilizing growth. Next, in long-term expectation in 5 years. So financial literacy, you can see here that with OLS is still significantly, but with after we fix indulgency is become insignificantly. So but the outside for just ECB variable is also follow the same pattern estimates are not severely biased in this case, and you can see in the top table here the coefficient not change much, and financial insecurity strongly reduce inflation uncertainty growth across OLS and IV. We see the negative signal here. So to conclude, apart from our four main model, we come with three main empirical takeaway here. So first, trust in ECB has a cultural anchoring, in fact increasing with horizon for the short-term travel ahead, for the 3 years ahead and 45 years ahead, and then financial literature reduce uncertainty, but not for long-run level, especially for 5 years. It just significantly affecting treatment in 3 years, and the last OL zero it understand the role of trust. So in this kind of model, achievement variable is so crucial. So with this result, we want to highlight here that we also draw the descriptive variable, but in the platforming instead of arrow, but separately the country. So it's kind of subtractive signal that you can see that Australia almost a time higher than also the pop mean and standard error also higher than the Netherlands. So it is kind of the signal that we can extend this result to apply this model to each country to see the effects of heterogeneous effect among different countries. Okay, so next is the part of conclusion in compare with literature. Right.
I will continue with the comparisons with related literature. First is our replications, and second is, and third is the true orders. There's how many information, but you can skip this table. You just care for about the takeaway. There are three main points. For the strongest alignments, that is the trust. The higher trust is associated with the lowest inflation expectations, and the IV estimates are stronger than OOS, which support for credibility in present. And the second one is literacy is more mixed and differ by horizons. Positive at trailment for this, but negative for weaker as longer horizons. And this can happen because our literacies are measured financial literacy. However, with the true order replicates, true orders, that they focus on innovations literacy, so that's a little bit different. And for the biggest difference, that is the uncertainty, because we measure uncertainty using density-based second movement in CES, which is not the same as the uncertainty process in other studies. So that is the big difference. And to wrap up the MASH, the difference and the distinctions for the MASH, that is the trust. And financial literacy is also a master, but its effect means it's more horizon dependent. It is not much like trust. So, and for the difference, that is the uncertainty. And for the next extensions, for the next research extension, it means that the next for the future, I give first one that is the test anchoring more directly. For example, check whether trust mainly affect people with the extreme prior. I think that is the next point for the future. And for the main takeaway, that is trust is the most broad channel. Uncertainty needs harmonized methods. It means that if we want to argue about the site, we just make sure that we are in memories in the same characteristics or in the same method. Yes, that's it, our presentation.
Excellent. Any comments from the class or questions? You could find something unclear.
think they are strong?
Okay. So first we choose trust in people. You trust in people. Okay. When you trust in people, treat as instrument variable, and the reason why we believe that this instrument variable because based on the original paper of Krishna and on the author in 2020, actually they use two instrument variable. This the first one and another one, but because of the limitation of the data shops, so we just include this and luckily that we test for the width of this instrument variable and we come with this f figure. We know that the signal for non-width instrument variable that the f have to larger than 10, but this number is really large than 10. So that's why we continue our model.
But is this the criteria for the relevance? But in the theory, how because the criteria for good instrument, there's two criteria, right? It's the relevance condition and then the exogeneity. So even for the relevance, it's still not clear for me, maybe because I haven't read the paper yet. But in the original paper, does they provide any reason why you think that, this instrument should not be correlated with the error term?
As I read that, the reason they choose trust because trust have the correlation with trust in people have the correlation in trust in ECB or trust in institution. And other than that, we don't know that whether this instrument exactly correlate with the error term. We just use the test to test it. So that is also the evidence for us to continue the result with this instrument variable.
Yeah, so the question I think is very clear and also good question from me. We prove that our instrument variables here is strong and relevant, but also isogynous with the error term. And the first point you mentioned is quite clear that we find that this instrument variable is very relevant because it's strongly correlated with church in the ECB, right? And the second part we need to explain that this one is not directly affect to the formation of inflation expectation. And the only way that judging the other people can have impact on the formation of inflation expectation is going through the judging the ECB. And we know that when they form expectation about inflation, for example, so it's about the macroeconomic variables, and we know that the ECB is responsible for keeping price stability, right? So judging the ECB must be the main driver of inflation expectation. And judging the other people, for example, how much I judge the other people in my areas here, maybe less likely have a direct impact on how I think about the future price level, right? So the only way that judging the other people may have some impact on inflation expectation is so really through how I judge the institution, how I judge the government, and how much I judge the ECB or the central bank. So that's why we can use judging the other people as an instrument for judging ECB when they come to study the impact of judging ECB on the formation of inflation expectation. That is the idea how they can choose a variable just in the other people's judging the other people as an instrument for to study the positive impact of judging the ECB or judging the central bank on the formation of inflation expectation. So another instrument variable in the papers here they ask one survey question to see whether you have any do you have experience with any fraud or cheating when you go to some activity like car fixing or any fraud in the for daily life? You have experience with the fraud or cheating, right? And that also important variable that can influence on how much you judge in the institution like the central bank. But the experience with cheating in the daily life has no direct impact, or there's no theory to show that it has impact on how you form the macroeconomic expectation. So that they also can use kind of variable as the instrument variable to study the causal effect of judging central bank on the formation of inflation expectation. Yeah. So that is also one key idea of the paper when we want to study the causal effect of judging the central bank on the formation of inflation expectation. And the group, I think, you also do a very good job in terms of you also try to replicate this one about how to use the ID approach to study the causal effect of judging the central bank on the formation of inflation expectation. So you are not only or simply estimate the formation of inflation expectation on directly on the judging central bank or financial agency. So that's a good point. And other question from the class? I think so. For the paper, for the presentation, maybe you need to explain a little bit more how to conduct the financial literacy. For example, because different paper they have different measures of financial literacy.
Actually, in the original paper, they use the inflation literacy to, they use inflations, but because we don't have inflation literacy fraction in our data, so I put financial literacy, but so you can see that we construct the financial literacy index. We also apply the same approach with the original paper. That in the original paper they construct 10 different fractions in the survey, and with each fraction in 1 point each, in 1 point, and so we apply the same. So because in the data set in the survey we have 4 fractions relating to financial literacy. So if the respondent they respond correctly 1, so we count it 1. So the minimum number of this financial literacy index therefore is 0, meaning that they respond incorrectly for all fractions, and for is the highest maximum level of this financial literacy index.
Any other comments or questions?
Because of time limitation, so we just go through the key point here. But if you have any question to dig deeper into this 2 hours, we can discuss more. So we're really excited to do this.
So I have one more comment, just regarding to how to present the result. I know that it's we have very limited time to prepare for that. So I think to be and present here and so here, I think it's great already. But when you work on the data, for example, the way you present result would be something like this one, and then you can see all the results in only 1 table or 2 tables. For example, for the first result, we estimate the effect of financial literacy and judge the central bank on the level of inflation expectation, right? So, you can for table like this one. Here, then here is a 12 months ahead as its IP approach. And then here you can have one estimate, and one, so that you can see the difference between the OF regression and the IP regression for 12 months ahead, right? And then we do the same thing here. Also, one is the OLF regression, and here's the IP approach. And we also have estimate here, and the same thing for 5 years ahead with OLF regression and IP approach, right? And then we have some estimate. Right, so based on only one table here, we can see all the results about impacted financial literacy on 12 months ahead, 2 years ahead, and 5 years ahead with different strategy. Just simple OLF regression, and then you fix the problem homogeneity using the IP approach, and the same thing for different correlation. And as a variable here, that we mentioned here, potentially like some demographic. Demographic variables here, but you don't have to solve like age allocation or income here because it's not variable interest, right? So you can say that here you are already control or not yes or no, right? Like in anthropic paper, right? We just say that the regression here, whether we control for demographic or not, and then in the footnote, there is so that control variable demographic here, maybe age, where income, employment.
So I have a question because our model also includes continuing fixed effect and
Yeah.
also weight in fixed effect, but the domain for weight fixed effect is counted really large.
Yeah, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so in
how-
this case, yeah, so in this case, you say weight, fit effect, and county fit effect, right? You say that you all so control that and you control yes, you do for all. Yes, yes. Because we don't interested in how much the result change across different programs. And then we just so like this one example or we can go for all the variables and weight effect, right? Just yes, good. Or no, for example. So that the table we can very clearly, right? And we just focus on these two variables. So in the paper you can, if you also interested in demographic or country effect, you also can show all the results here. But in presentation, you just show 2 lines in rows here. Because here's the main variable interest and the main conditional interest. And this is the first table. And the second table, you look at the uncertainty, for example. So you have the first we get into the Y estimate or the level of expectation, and the second table, the same structure like this one, but from the uncertainty. And the paper will be very clear, and you don't have to solve the different things here, and it looks very hard to follow, right?
So that's why I highlight.
Yeah.
So I use the color lighting highlighters, our two main interest direction.
Yeah, exactly. So which chart we did it, this good, this fine, and in class it's okay.
Actually, we also see this table design in the original version of regular in 2020.
Yeah.
And she also do the same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to do that in maybe I have to copy the
No.
to paste to the Excel file or something.
Yeah, so that's why you have to, you can look at some of my papers, some publication paper, and also I have U file, so that you can estimate a series of regression, and then you just fix some of the result, and then click here to look at it manually. But I know that's the third group can do that, so you can ask the group later about how you can just estimate some parameter here and there. So the third group we present it, not sure about the second group we do that or not, but the third group for sure we do that, and then we can move from third group next week. Okay, so
combine everything and for the with the yes with the FL fixed effect or not is the final one.
I think it's better to control of the way effect and then effect in the main ground. Yeah. And for demographics here, I think it's important as well because all demographic controls here also have important effects on incentivize financial and also on interest expectation, right? Yeah, okay, very good. One more time. Yeah, this sermon slide.